Welcome to my first episode of my new series talking about potential future countries of the world, ranging from the large democratic independence movements to countries that are at civil war fighting for independence. To start off this series, we took a deep dive around Asia, some highly potential future countries and some not, due to power out of their control. Now, before we get started, we need to find what a country is and why a group of people would even want to be a country. By definition, a country is a nation with its own government occupying a particular area which they call home. Now, why would these regions want to be their own country? And it's because the primary driver for forming a country is the desire for a group of people to live under a political system that reflects their own culture, language, religion, and traditions. Now we've covered that, let's talk about these groups of people that want their life to reflect these ideas. The first country on this is Kurdistan. The most interesting and most likely country to appear later on in the 21st century is the state of Kurdistan. And in the same way as the former Central Asian countries of the USSR, Southern Asian countries with the Persian suffix stan, meaning place of or land of, and the Kurd part referring to the ethnic Kurdish group inhabiting it. This would make them also unique to the English and European parts of the world, as all recognised stan countries border each other. The Kurdish, or most commonly known by Kurds, have been around for either 5,000 years or 4,000 years, depending on which source you pick, with the first known records of the official Kurdish name being in the 10th century, just over 1,000 years ago. Kurdistan was originally supposed to be a country at the end of World War I, when the Ottoman Empire was collapsing and the European countries were deciding how to draw the borders. But unfortunately, they came to the conclusion they weren't to be drawn with the idea of drawing them around ethnic groups, or even letting them draw the borders themselves, but instead with strategic and colonial interests. In the 1920s, even after the First World War, major European powers like the British and French were still the most dominant forces across the world with no opposing power with a different ideology to tell them no, so it was settled. Turkey would take the largest portion of the area, including the largest number of Kurds, which is roughly 18 million, and govern it. Persia, also known today as Iran, would control the second highest number of Kurds, being 8 million. 5 million would be drawn at the time into the British-owned Iraq, and 2 million into the French-owned Syria. After all this, Kurdistan did have high hopes of becoming an independent state. During the 1920s, after all these borders were drawn, the allied British and French created the Treaty of Sevres on the Turkish government. This treaty would allow the highly populated regions of Kurds in the eastern Anatolian region of Turkey, if they wanted to, could vote for a Kurdish entity with local autonomy. This, if went ahead, would unfortunately not include the Kurdish regions of Iraq, Syria, because the British and French designed the area, so they got the best results out of it. The Treaty of Sevres, even though how promising and hopeful it was, wouldn't last, as the Turkish war of independence would shatter the treaty, as the Turkish people would see this as a national humiliation and would start a rebellion led by Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. This will last 3 years, fighting on many different fronts in multiple different nations. The end result of these conflicts would be the recognition of the Republic of Turkey as a sovereign nation with its modern borders, abolishment of the Treaty of Sevres, cancelling the planned Kurdish and Armenian states, returning key cities and territories including Eastern Thrace and Smirana to Turkish control. This would be the first of many conflicts the Kurdish people would find themselves in, with multiple failed rebellions in Turkey up to the late 1930s, and countless conflicts with Iran, Iraq and Syria. One of the most deadliest being during the Anaf campaign between 1986 and 1989 against Saddam Hussein's Iraqi army during the Iran-Iraqi war. There were countless uprisings and rebellions during the 1900s and 2000s, with multiple still ongoing. If you'd like me to make a separate video talking about these in detail about the major conflicts that Kurdish people have faced, let me know in the comments below. Now, how would an independent Kurdistan stand in today's society and economy? Going by 2022 stats, the regions it would consume would be Turkey Southeastern Anatolia region, with a total GDP of 44.745 billion, with a GDP per capita of 5,220. Turkey's Eastern region, with a total GDP of 28.582 billion, with a GDP per capita of 4,390. The Autonomous Kurdish region in Iraq, the KRI, with a total GDP of 66 billion, with a GDP per capita of 7,038. The Iranian part of Kurdistan, with a total GDP of 10.29 billion, with a GDP per capita of 1,395. Making them the 61st largest economy, behind Slovakia and in front of Uzbekistan. Kurdistan's total population will be around 35 million, with the most citizens coming from Turkish-controlled Kurdistan, lowering the population from 86 million down to 68 to 70 million, depending on what source you use. This put Kurdistan in a joint 42nd spot with Saudi Arabia. Finally, the size of United Kurdistan. Kurdistan will be around 382,000 kilometers squared, making it the 62nd largest country behind Norway at the head of Japan. I'll give you the general facts and history of Kurdistan, but ultimately, for them to stand as a country, we need to talk about their economics and how they'll be run. Start off, we need to figure out what the capital would be. There are already 4 capital cities of the Kurdish people inside each country, with Erbil in Iraq, with 1.6 million residents, Diyarbakir in Turkey, with 1.7 million residents, Sananjar in Iran, with 1.6 million residents, Chushar, the other major Kurdish hub in Iran of Kermanshah, Qamishli in Syria, with by far the least of 500,000 residents. Big 1 and 4 is very tricky, and there most likely wouldn't be a single capital if Kurdistan existed, but I think Erbil in Iraq would take it. Erbil already functions as a de facto capital of the Kurdistan Regional Government, the KRG, in northern Iraq, most politically autonomous and economically developed Kurdish region in the world. Here's the reasons why Erbil would almost certainly be the nation's capital. 1. Politics. The KRG's parliament, presidency and most ministries are based in Erbil, and it already has political institutions, government buildings and international recognitions that other Kurdish cities lack. 2. Historical significance. Erbil is one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities on Earth, dating back over 6,000 years. The Erbil Citadel, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, has stood as the city centre since the ancient Mesopotamian times, a symbol of Kurdish endurance and identity. 3. Strategic location. Erbil sits at the geographical crossroads between Iraq, Turkey and Iran, connecting the highlands of Kurdistan with the plains of the Mesopotamian. It's also safely inland and more stable compared to border regions. 4. Economic growth. The city has seen rapid modernisation since the early 2000s, with high-rises, university and international businesses. It hosts a major international airport, numerous foreign consultants, and an expanding oil trade network. 5. Cultural neutrality. Erbil is widely accepted across Kurdish factions, the KDP, PUK and more, as a unifying political centre, unlike Süleymaniyye, which is more PUK-aligned, or Diyarbakir, which is located within Turkey. For all these reasons, Erbil will be the most neutral and internationally viable choice for the Kurdish capital. With the capital now covered, let's talk about the economy of Kurdistan. It's hard to determine whether Kurdistan will be designed around capitalism or a socialist society, as it's only really the region of Turkey that follows true capitalism. But as we said, the most likely future capital is Erbil. Does it lean either way and has a multitude of different parties wanting different ideologies? But I think it leans more towards capitalism, especially if a westernised country helps with their independence and future trade. Speaking of trade, Kurdistan's main resource, as you can guess, being located in the Middle East, is gas and oil, with 45 billion barrels just located in the Iraqi part and 5.7 trillion cubic metres of oil. Being a landlocked country, trading with neighbours is their best bet, with an estimated 70% of trade just being to Turkey alone. They will be rich in many other materials such as iron, copper, zinc, marble and limestone. Being landlocked isn't a threatening issue, as Kurdistan with the river Tigris running through it with large bodies of water in it such as the Van Golu. With all this information, the last thing to cover about Kurdistan would be, would they be able to communicate with each other? The answer is mostly yes, with the most common language being Kurdish and its many dialects. The most common one being the northern Kurdish called Kurmanjani, with around 20 million speakers, Central Kurdish called Sorani with 10 million speakers, and the last being Southern Kurdish called Hawali with 3 million speakers. These numbers are highballs, so most likely be a few million who speak neighbouring languages, but not a large amount. With all this information, does this help us believe Kurdistan will exist? Yes and no. Yes, in the sense of how much the Kurds have fought throughout the years and displayed their desire for independence. And no, in the sense that it's a major hit to 4 countries by losing a lot of residents and natural resources. And the fact you need 4 separate independence movements makes it a struggle, but overall it'd be very interesting to see an independent Kurdistan. Thank you for watching my first ever video. In part 2, we'll be talking about independent Tibet. My upload schedule will be on the 10th, 20th and 30th of every single month. Thank you for watching.